Who-dats. Welcome to the podcast you've been waiting for. Great perspective and exclusive interviews.
It's a hard job for those guys because it's happening fast.
The kind of Saints insight and fun commentary you won't get anywhere else.
We've got plenty of technology to speed things up.
It's time to kick off your Been There, Done That Saints podcast, where we hand it off to our host, Mike Nabors, and Super Bowl winning linebacker, Scott Shanle.
Proud of these guys.
Is it football season? I think it's football season. Welcome back, Saints Nation, Football Nation, to our Been There, Done That podcast. I'm your host, Mike Nabors. I'm going to bring in my crew, of course, former New Orleans Saints Super Bowl winning linebacker Scott Shanle and my producer, Justin Thomas. Shanle, as a player, is it kind of mixed feelings? Is it you're excited to be back when you report, or, man, it's training camp and I'm dreading the next couple of weeks?
It's definitely mixed feelings because, once you report for training camp, your freedom is over until hopefully February. That's the goal anyway. But you've enjoyed a lot of off time, and that's the hardest thing about going to camp is your most extreme times of having so much time off, June and July, to being your most demanding time of August and September and starting the season is right there in front of you. And I always think guys are excited. It's easy when you play for a good organization. You have good teammates. You have high goals ready to obtain. You're ready to put all that hard work on the field. Those are the things that are easy to get excited about training camp. But still, there's that part of you, like especially for us, going to Jackson, Mississippi, and the heat in those college dorms. It was tough.
Justin Thomas, as a fan, you're loving it though, right?
I am. I mean, especially, in 15 years, we've been so used to Drew and Sean Payton. So I'm really excited to see what this new era is going to bring.
All right, let's cut to the chase, Shanle. I'm looking at this football team right now. We'll get to Michael Thomas's injury and David Onyemata and all the drama on really both sides of the football. But boy, no number 9. It's going to be a quarterback competition. Maybe some don't think so, but I like to see how this plays out. There are 3 constants in life. I think sometimes there are 3 constants with football teams, and I'm looking at the roster, Shanle. Okay, the O-line's a constant. Will Lutz, a constant. Demario Davis. But besides that, a lot of question marks, Shanle. A lot.
Yeah, and I'm like Justin. I'm excited to see what a different era of Saints football is going to look like. But I'm gonna tell you, I am more nervous than excited because we've gotten so used to seeing Drew out there. And I know the last couple of years he couldn't throw the ball farther than 45 yards, and everybody got tired of the dink and dunk offense. But there was something about the efficiency that I believe is going to be hard to replicate. Now, on the flip side, I'm excited about seeing the vertical game. I'm excited about seeing the field get stretched with Harris and some speed down the field. But Alvin Kamara's back is going to hurt because he is going to carry the workload like you've never seen. And you just pointed to it, Mike. This offensive line, you have to take advantage of it. It's still one of the best offensive lines in the NFL. And I believe for them to get out of the early part of the season with some W's, the offensive line is going to have to play like that.
All right, I want you to think about this. I'm going to offer my answer, too. We're going to have our fun, more likely segment at the end. But I want, from the 3 of you guys, one word to describe this football team heading into the season. And while you think about that, I surprise these guys, Saints fans, if you're listening. We don't kind of rehearse this podcast. It's free-flowing a lot of the time. My one word to describe this team, fragile. And it was that word before Michael Thomas. It's even more fragile now. The offensive line is really, really good. But, boy, the defensive line has a lot of holes. The secondary, oh, my goodness. The linebackers, the quarterback position. I mean, we could go on and on and on. We haven't seen this kind of fragility. And if anything happens the rest of the way, it's going to move from fragile to, I don't know what the word is, but to me the word is fragile. Shanle, do you have a word to describe this football team heading into the season?
Yeah, I think I know the spiel I just gave doesn't sound like I'm high on this team, but my word would be underrated. Wow. I think everybody expects this team to fall flat on its face. I think everybody expects this team to be under 500 because there's no Drew Brees, and how are they going to get into the rhythm with Taysom and Jameis and a different quarterback? And now you have Michael missing some of the season, and David, and all these different things. And the schedule's tough. The schedule's not easy. So I think everybody's sitting there looking at the Saints team like they're going to be 6-11. And I believe that they're still one of the better teams in the NFC. They can definitely compete at least for a wild card position. And I think they have a tremendous coaching staff. And so I think people are writing this team off too early.
Justin, usually go first for more likely. We're letting you bat third in this scenario. But how about Shanle with underrated? That's a good take right there. I'm fragile. What's the one word you have for the Saints entering training camp, entering this season, based on everything that's happened this offseason with the draft and Yamada and Michael Thomas and all the moving parts?
Man, even going third, I still didn't have enough time to come up with a good word.
Concerned?
Yeah. Actually, not so much concerned. I was trying to think of one word to say what in my mind is two words.
Hopeful. Are you hopeful? Hopeful.
I am hopeful. I'm thinking uncharted, as in uncharted territory.
Wow.
I mean, like I said earlier, it's been Breeze and Sean Payton for 15 years. That's all we've known. I want to see if Sean is a good coach without Breeze, similar how a lot of people are wondering if Tom Brady was a good player without Bill Belichick.
All right, uncharted, underrated, and fragile. Saints fans, if you're listening, we'd love you to weigh in on Twitter. Where are we on Twitter, Justin?
At Done Dad Podcast.
I've had some Saints fans weigh in lately. Are you guys coming back? We're definitely back. We're going to be here for training camp and, of course, during the regular season as well, breaking things down. All right, let's get to Michael Thomas, Shanle. This is not good news for the New Orleans Saints. They're not deep at wide receiver. And I thought, like you, a lot of people point to Drew Brees leaving, but you still had Alvin Kamara. You still had Michael Thomas. Well, they don't have Michael Thomas, at least right now. What do you make of this whole situation? Because he didn't catch a touchdown pass a year ago. He really wasn't a factor for the most part. Boy, do they need Michael Thomas to be in there if they have a chance of making the playoffs.
Yeah, no question, especially when you're breaking in a new quarterback. But can I do the one word for Michael Thomas?
Yes.
Can I do that? How about frustrated? I'm so frustrated. And I don't know whether I should be frustrated with Michael or just frustrated at the situation because, I got to believe Michael is a competitor. And I think he's, when he's setting single season reception records, you don't just do that, by chance. And I think he's the ultimate competitor. But there was something that happened last year that, with the release of him or the leaks of him wanting to be traded and getting in a fight with Chauncey and all these different things that happened, I just don't know where his mind is. And I don't know if that led to him pushing off the surgery. But just knowing the way he competes on the field, I don't believe that's the case. And I think a lot of people think that is. I just look at it from this standpoint. Every player wants to put surgery off as long as possible. And that is a last resort, a last option. And I think with not having a normal offseason, because, guys, in March or April in a normal offseason, and I blame our union for this, our union letting guys not have a normal offseason. A lot of these guys they did their own training. You can only push yourself so hard when you're doing it by yourself or with a personal trainer. And now that camp's getting closer, you have to come to the realization, is my injury good enough to perform at the level I need to perform at? And I think Michael felt like it wasn't, recovering the way he wanted to. And he went to his doctor, and the doctor said, if you want to be back to old Michael Thomas, you got to get surgery. I don't believe it was something that he wanted to do. He just waited too long to do it.
All right, this is a hot take, and I'm not a big hot take guy. I know he's making a lot of money. Do you think they consider trading him at all this offseason? Because his value's up there, but boy, his salary cap hits up there as well.
Absolutely, Mike. And that's not because I think the Saints and Michael have issues. I think every player is tradable. Every player has their price, especially when you're an organization that we just talked about is moving on from their quarterback. There's all sorts of new things going on. And if the season doesn't start off, they don't start off with a bang. They start off 1-4. And Michael comes back midseason. Absolutely. Everybody is always tradable depending on what you can get for them. And especially if you have to look at the salary cap in future years. So, yeah, everybody's tradable. I just don't think that he's a caliber player you would look to get rid of unless the haul was really good.
Well, I was thinking, too, with their cap situation, the fact that, they need help in a lot of ways, that he could bring in draft picks, he could create some room. I thought all those could be potential positives. Yeah, I agree. You don't want to lose a Michael Thomas, but we know that the locker room wasn't all happy-go-lucky with him in there. We don't know the depths of it. Maybe you know better than me. But I think there's a lot of factors with him where if the offer was right, it could have been perfect timing for this football team, given the fact that their cap situation wasn't good and they needed more draft capital to improve a lot of positions.
Absolutely. And, Mike, the thing that is going to dictate how much the Saints would want to trade Michael Thomas has nothing to do with Michael Thomas. I firmly believe it comes down to how well Taysom and Jameis play. If neither one of those guys play well enough that the Saints organization feels like they're the future of the franchise, Now you have to start looking for ways to accumulate capital and draft capital. That's when you have to trade players like Michael Thomas, because if you don't have a franchise quarterback, you don't have anything. It does no good to have a receiver like Michael standing there without a guy to get him the ball. So Michael's trade value or urgency to trade him is going to come down to how well Taysom and Jameis play.
Absolutely. All right, this is your Saints training camp preview. We're going to be with you during training camp and obviously during the regular season. Boy, it's not going to be a boring offseason, or it hasn't been a boring offseason. It's not going to be a boring training camp for the New Orleans Saints because of the quarterback battle. It's Jameis versus Taysom. I live in Tampa. I get so many people saying Jameis has to be the guy, right? And I know I'm a bigger Taysom fan than any of you guys. But here's the deal. I think Jameis is the guy, but boy, if he plays like the old Jameis and throws interceptions, that's going to be interesting because Sean Payton's not going to put up with that, Shanle.
Oh, absolutely not. If there's one thing that Coach Payton will not tolerate, it's turning the football over. And I've said this a lot of times, and it just sits there and rings in my head because I've heard it so many times. And Coach will stand in front of the meeting and say, when you carry the football for our team and our organization, you carry the hopes and the dreams of everybody in this building. And so he lets it be known, if you turn the football over, because turnovers win and lose games in the NFL. And that's another thing. He showed the stat where if you're +1 in the turnover takeaway ratio, how you have a 70% chance of winning. If you get up to +2, now you have an 85% chance of winning. If you're +3, you're in the 90% chances of winning an NFL football game. So that's why he puts a premium on taking care of the football, because he understands it equals wins and losses in the NFL. So Jameis's playtime truly is going to be dictated on whether or not he's been able to eliminate the turnovers.
All right, here's the $1 million question to me is, you have Taysom, you have Jameis Winston, but does Sean Payton love Taysom more than we give him credit for? Or is it, what's in Sean Payton's head? Can you get inside Sean Payton's head with this quarterback battle entering training camp? Is he like, Jameis is my guy as long as he doesn't screw it up, or I'm really going to give Taysom a shot? How do you think Sean Payton is viewing this right now with camp starting this week?
Well, I firmly believe that Taysom is his guy right now in his head. And going into camp, he's sitting there saying, Taysom Hill, this is your job to lose. Jameis Winston, this is your job. This is your job every day to come out here and show us why you should be the starting quarterback. Mm-hmm. And you have to do it from a consistency standpoint and show us that you bring us more than Taysom does. And I don't think anybody will argue that in the passing game, Jameis is probably going to bring more than Taysom, especially if he cuts out the turnovers. And that's why ultimately I think Jameis can become the starting quarterback with Taysom remaining in that role he's been in with Drew, but maybe being elevated and doing a little bit more.
And then you have conversely this. If Jameis wins and Jameis improves and he's a good Jameis, not throwing picks, Shanle, can this offense be better given the fact that Breeze has been hurt the last couple of years and Jameis can find a Traquan down the field, a Deontay? And I mean, is that a possibility too? Because I think it is.
It is a possibility. Now, I like that possibility much more with number 13, Michael Thomas out there.
Absolutely.
I think early in the season, you're going to see a more of a conservative approach out of this offense, a 50-50 balance, taking advantage of Alvin Kamara, running the ball behind this offensive line, maybe get some screen passes. You're going to see more vertical games, stretching offenses because you have the arm strength now to do it. But I just think with the wide receiver group the way it is, being somewhat inexperienced, just not having Michael out there and having that possession receiver when you need a slant, when you need a deep end, when you need those routes to convert the chains, that's what I think you're going to miss more than anything to start the season.
It's going to be interesting. You're going to have the quarterback battle, and then you have the targets. I mean, you mentioned not having Michael Thomas. How big a concern is that wide receiver position? Because they really didn't address it in the draft. And you got a lot of young guys who have had splash moments, but there's not a lot of consistency there at all.
Yeah, I'm a little concerned. Obviously, my concern level goes up because the guy we've been talking about the entire podcast, Michael Thomas, not being there. But these other guys, Traquan Smith, we've seen him step up big in different weeks. When his number's been called upon, he's made plays. So there are guys, Deontay Harris, there are guys who are going to have tremendous opportunities to emerge. And I think they'll take advantage of it. But I also think that the offensive staff is not going to ask the offense to look the same as well. You're going to see a lot more running. You're going to see a lot more play action pass. You're going to see a simplified version of the route trees with these receivers until they can prove that they can make those plays that they want them to make. But if there's one position that we should never doubt with the Saints, it's wide receiver. We've seen guys come out of nowhere and become really good receivers in this offense. So I think that'll happen again.
And then you got the Troutman factor at tight end. That's going to be interesting. I mean, he's not really proven, but when called upon last year, he played well. So that could be maybe an X factor, especially with Michael Thomas out for a while.
Yes. I mean, when you drafted him and they were making comparisons that he reminds them of Jason Witten, a Hall of Famer, a guy who is top 5 in receptions at that position. I think there's been a lot of expectations placed on him, but I believe he's a really good player. He's gotten enough reps the last couple years or last year to jump into that starting role. And I think, the one thing about Saints Nation, Jared Cook was one of the most anticipated offseason signings. I thought he was going to fit in great with the offense. When he was healthy and he could be around from week to week, he was still a great target in the offense. But the inconsistencies last year led to him getting that slip out of town. And so I think people are excited about seeing a different tight end and seeing one of their own homegrown draft picks step in there as a starting tight end.
Absolutely. All right. That's the breakdown on offense. Let's look at the Saints defense. A lot of holes. And, a lot of people point to the quarterback position, and that's obviously going to be front and center of this training camp. But for me, the way I feel, and especially Shanle, you playing and seeing this for so many years, a big Achilles heel in the Sean Payton era was the lack of quality play at cornerback. And with Janoris Jenkins being let go and quickly picked up this offseason, there's a huge void there. And then you have the Marshawn Lattimore factor. You don't know if he's going to be suspended. Every day it looks like he's going to be okay in terms of that. But I'm more concerned, frankly, about the secondary than maybe the quarterback position, because I feel like the quarterback position, it may not be great, but I think it'll still be good. But boy, the cornerback position, that's huge for me, Shanle.
Yeah, I think my biggest concern on this team is the cornerback position, because we've seen when the Saints secondary, especially cornerback, has been settled, they've had good seasons. When that position is up in the air, it seems like things kind of unravel. And I'm not saying that guy doesn't exist on the roster, but I certainly don't think that the caliber of player is what Janoris Jenkins was. And Janoris Jenkins was only released because of his cap number. We all know that the Saints were in salary cap hell a little bit and had to get rid of some good players. So they're going to have to find a guy opposite Marshawn. And the thing about being the guy opposite Marshawn, you are going to have a chance to make a lot of plays because the ball is going to come your way a lot. So that position is up in the air, and I'm interested to see what they do there.
All right, you're looking at Paulson Adebo. He opted out last year, hadn't played football in a long time. Of course, the rookie out of Stanford, and you got P. Rob, and you got Brian Poole, a guy they brought in. This is going to shake out the next couple of weeks, but do you see Adebo winning this job, or do you see maybe they lean on a veteran and kind of bring him in like you do a quarterback on the other side of the football, or maybe he lights it up? I mean, what are you expecting right now? Is it hard to predict this one, Shanle?
Yeah, it's hard to predict. I think they're gonna scour the waiver wire, and they're gonna look for somebody throughout the preseason if nobody emerges at that position.
All right, we go from the secondary. Let's talk Shanley's favorite position, the linebacking core. You have Demario Davis, and to me, a bunch of question marks after that. You have Anzalone, he's gone. Yeah, Quan Alexander's still out there. They may sign him, but you got a lot of young guys. You got Pete Werner, you got Zach Bond. What do you make of these linebackers, Shanle, heading into training camp?
Listen, there's no question mark about Demario Davis. I mean, finally, people realize he's one of the best linebackers in the NFL, and it's arguable he has been the best the last 2 years. So as long as you have that man in the middle, and he's been a mainstay, a lot of your problems are solved because of all the passing that happens in the NFL. Now, you really need another guy to step up because it's a nickel league, and that means that you have 2 linebackers playing with 5 DBs. Somebody has to step up, and we haven't had anybody step up in that role the last couple of years. Alex is now in Detroit. It just didn't work out with him. He was hurt too much, too inconsistent last year. But the guy that I'm looking for is Zach Bond. Listen, they drafted you really high out of Wisconsin, and it's time. Coach Payton and Coach Parcells always said, in year 1, you're just trying to figure things out. Year 2, we need to see that you can do it. Year 3, we have to see improvement, or you're not going to be here anymore. So yes. Zach Bond, this is a critical year for him in the development stages of how Sean Payton views players. He's got to go out there and show that he can do it. He's got to show that he can be relied on to be on the field, to make plays at this level, especially when they draft you and they put that investment in you. They are going to give you every opportunity to prove that you're that guy who should be lining up with Demario Davis. So Zach's probably the one I'm looking to the most. And then Pete Warner, when they draft you as high as they drafted you, they're going to give you every opportunity to be that second linebacker or possibly third linebacker in a base set. So those two guys, I think we all have the highest expectations for. But there's no doubt in my mind there could be somebody else in this group that emerges. There could be somebody that they end up signing off the street for some depth who ends up emerging. This position outside of Demario Davis is up in the air.
All right. Take me inside the Saints organization. I'm sure they'd love to have a Quan Alexander in there. But are they, making sure he's healthy, and then maybe seeing how these young guys play? And if they don't play well, they bring in a guy like that? I mean, what's the mindset of the Saints, do you think, with the potential of a Quan Alexander?
Yeah, Quan played pretty well when he was there before he got hurt. Quan was kind of inconsistent, though, in terms of responsibilities. But he was athletic, and he flew around the field, and his energy level was awesome. He brought a lot of energy to the field. And he could definitely be that guy who could line up next to Demario. But I think when you're in the cap situation you're in, you really need a guy like Quan who's played a lot of football to accept a veteran minimum deal. And I don't know if he'll do that without testing the market. And, there could be other guys on this team that end up emerging, and that's what training camp's for. And they're going to give every opportunity for these guys to show that they can be on the field. And as a young guy, I would love to be out there in training camp with a guy like Demario Davis, learning from one of the best, watching the way he goes about business. That usually gives you a chance to make it in this league.
All right, let's go to the defensive line. You have Cam Jordan. Didn't have really a Cam Jordan year a year ago. David Onyemata is not going to be there for 6 games. You lose Shelton Rankins. You lose Malcolm Brown. You lose a lot of guys in the interior part. Marcus Davenport, Scott Shanle, can you step up? They need him to step up in a big way this year.
Yeah, you talk about pressure. I mean, I put a little pressure on Zach Bond just now, saying it's time for him to step up. But there is nobody with the bullseye on them like Marcus Davenport. And maybe he relishes in that. Maybe he's going to show everybody and prove everybody wrong, because there are a lot of people out there, and I've been one of them at the time when they drafted him, and off and on I've said that was way too much to give up for a guy who played at a small school in San Antonio. And I didn't see it on film in college. I saw him run around tackles who he was just faster than and more explosive than, but I didn't see any pass rush technique or skills that I thought would translate to the NFL. There's been times in the NFL where I watch him, I'm like, this guy has so much potential. You can't teach 6'7", 255 and that get off and the explosiveness he has. There is so much potential there, but for that potential to emerge into what we all want it to be, he's got to stay healthy. There is no getting better or making plays and becoming a better player by standing on the sideline every couple of weeks because you have a new injury. He's got to stay healthy. He's got to take care of his body. And I think he has so much potential to be that starting guy opposite Cam, to make plays. And who doesn't want to start opposite Cam Jordan? Cam Jordan's going to get all the attention. You just need to stay on the field and make plays.
And let's talk about Peyton Turner. I mean, they obviously need help on defensive line, maybe more in the interior, obviously, that defensive line. But Peyton Turner, it's a great opportunity for him in this camp as well, Shanle.
There really is. And I know, there's a lot of pressure on Marcus Davenport, but there is also a lot of pressure on Peyton Turner. When you give up first-round picks, the expectations for that player is to be a Pro Bowl player and certainly a starting player in year one. And whether they put Peyton inside a little bit because he's got good size, and like I said, it's a passing league, they're going to find a way to get their best pass rushers on the field. There's a lot of pressure on him because, right or wrong, I think we can all agree Saints fans were not really impressed with that pick. So already you're going in with a lot of people kind of looking at you side-eyed with one eye open, like, okay, you got to prove to me that you were worthy of that first-round pick when we all felt like the Saints reached. So there is pressure on him, and I'm looking forward to seeing Cam and Peyton and Marcus on the field at the same time in pass rushing situations, just to get that pressure on Brady and these other guys who want to stand back there in the pocket.
All right. I heard Drew Brees talk on Mark Ingram and Cam Jordan's podcast recently, and kind of got a little glimpse of Drew Brees, the analyst. And one of my big takeaways was Brees was really adamant about how much he loved the Saints defense, about how they play and all their potential. How much does Scott Shanle love the Saints defense? I was surprised Brees was that excited about the defense, frankly.
Well, I think Drew, going against this defense the last couple of years, has had a lot of respect for them. But I also believe that Drew is not looking at it from the perspective of that a lot of those guys that he went against are not going to be there anymore.
Exactly,
We've talked about it. The defensive line interior is a shell of itself. We're looking for two, possibly one or two more linebackers to step up next to DeMario. You're looking for a cornerback to step up opposite Marshawn Lattimore. There are a lot of question marks and holes on this defense compared to the defense that Drew went against the last couple of years.
Absolutely. All right, we broke down both sides of football. Going to be a lot of interesting headlines this training camp, beginning with the quarterbacks, but obviously on the other side of the ball, you got the secondary. You got every segment, really, the linebackers and the D-line. But Justin, before we go, you know what time it is. All right, we're going to flip the script. When I threw the one-word question at you earlier on, I made Shanle go first. Now we're going to make Justin go first. It's more likely it's three hypotheticals. We talk about the Saints, we talk about the NFL, and we also go outside the lines and have a little bit of fun. And in this segment, we're going to do all three. Okay, the NFL rankings are starting to come to life, even though training camp is just beginning. The very respected Athletic had their NFL rankings. No surprise, Kansas City and the Buccos were 1 and 2. The Saints were 17. We're not used to seeing that. Usually they're a Super Bowl contender in the top 5, at least the top 10. They were 17. The Cowboys were ahead of the Saints. The Dolphins were ahead of the Saints. Where would you put the New Orleans Saints in your NFL rankings? I'm not going to ask for all 32. But would you put them in the top 10? Is 17 about right? Is it further than 17? More likely, Justin, what do you say?
Yeah, 17 seems a little low for me, especially with how talented Sean Payton is. I'm not going to put him in the top 10. I'm going to do top 15. I think somewhere between 10 and 15 seems more reasonable, maybe 12 or 13, somewhere in there. It's going to be interesting to see. Obviously, they lost some of their players, but they got a lot of their good core players still, although Thomas is hurt. I think this is a good team. Maybe not top 10 level, but definitely more competitive than 17.
Shanle, Justin hadn't lost his fastball, man. He still hits it. He didn't know it was coming, but he hit it out of the park there. Nice work, Justin. Shanle, what do you say? In terms of rankings, I'm going to give my opinion in just a second, but 17 for the Saints, should they be higher? Is that about right? What do you think?
Yeah, this ties into my one-word answer of underrated. I think when you have this many question marks regarding a team, everybody just kind of throws them into the middle. And I think the only reason they're that high in terms of outside evaluation is because of Sean Payton. To me, I think 11, 12, 13, it sounds like the power rankings usually just go off of who plays quarterback for the team, and that's where we're going to rank you. I think this team, they have a tough schedule. They're in a tough division. They have to play the defending world champs twice. But there's something about Coach Payton and feeling underestimated, that he does a great job of rallying the troops and getting guys to show the world and shock the world and prove everybody wrong. He does a great job of getting guys together to do that. So to me, I think right outside the top 10 would be a better number for me.
I agree with you. That's the thing about Peyton. Whenever the Saints are a big underdog, I always kind of like their chances, especially when they played the Bucs. That second game last year, I've never been more wrong about a football team. I mean, they go into Tampa and just humiliate the Bucs. If you would have asked any Buccaneer front office person, you know what, this team's going to win and win it all in this stadium, I don't think any of them would have been confident about that. But I agree. Sean Payton always rises to the occasion. Do you remember like a pregame speech or anything that he would tell you guys that they don't believe in us? Was he big on that, or would he do it in different ways?
Oh, absolutely. I remember in 2006 when we got there and he went around the room and pointed to guys and said, he'd point at me and say, you know what? Dallas Cowboys didn't think you were good enough. They didn't want you. Drew Brees, the San Diego Chargers didn't think you were good enough. They had to draft somebody. And he went around the room and he just found different guys to motivate. And that year we all kind of called ourselves the cast-offs and the guys that nobody wanted. So he always kind of develops a little theme in his head of how he wants to galvanize a team and unite a team. And I'll never forget that. 2006, we were a group of misfits who nobody wanted, and everybody thought we were going to finish last in the NFC South, and we were 5 minutes away from finishing out Chicago, possibly playing the Super Bowl. We just weren't ready at that time yet. We played beyond what we were talent-wise. But, he's always found ways to motivate players. And that's what makes him a great coach. I think he got that from Coach Parcells in terms of learning what buttons to push on each individual player. Now, some guys, if you don't know the player, you could have pointed at him in front of everybody and said, hey, the Dallas Cowboys didn't want you. And now that player gets mad or they shut down. But he knew exactly what type of guys he had in the room to do that.
By the way, Shanle, screw the Cowboys. All right. I'm just not only for that, but I'm just so tired of this is the Cowboys' year. This is their year. This is their year. I mean, enough already. Here's my take on this ranking. I think the Saints are better than the Cowboys. I think they're better than the Dolphins, but I looked at all the other teams, and you can make a case that they're better than the Saints, especially without Michael Thomas. They're kind of fragile. They're improvement mode with me. I think they're a top 15 football team in the NFL, but I got to see more. I got to see these quarterbacks play. I got to see the secondary play. So I'm going to put them about 15 because I think they're better than the Cowboys, better than the Dolphins. So, but the other teams are good. There's a lot of good play, especially the Bucs are going to be good. There's a lot of good. The Rams are going to be better with Matthew Stafford, I think. So it's going to be interesting. But I think they can be better than 15, but I'm going to put them 15 for now. All right, second more likely, the Saints' first game of the year is against the Green Bay Packers. More likely, with all the drama, it's a soap opera this offseason. Will Aaron Rodgers play against the New Orleans Saints in that opener in the Caesars Palace Superdome or whatever they're calling it now, Justin Thomas? Is it going to be Aaron Rodgers against the Saints? Will he be playing in that game more likely?
Who knows? I mean, I know he showed up at training camp. I know he's not happy. I've heard that he wants to get Randall Cobb back there so he can play with him. I don't know. Aaron Rodgers to me is starting to kind of piss me off. I understand that he's frustrated, but it's almost coming to a point where it's whiny. I would like to see the matchup. I think it would be a fun matchup, especially if Jameis is there. They two QBs slinging the ball down the field. But at the end of the day, who knows? I mean, Aaron Rodgers, he's been very adamant that he doesn't want to play and he wants to trade. So I'll see if he sticks to his guns or not. I would rather him play than not, just because of how good the game could be.
All right, good take, Justin Thomas. You didn't know it was coming once again. Shanle, is Rodgers going to be there for the first game? What do you think?
Absolutely, he will. He'll be there, 100% positive he'll be playing week one. Now, I just wish he was in a Saints uniform and not a Packers uniform. But he'll be there, and it sounds like they're getting things worked out. I understand. Aaron is kind of a diva. I've always respected his game. He's been a great competitor on the field. He's always been good to his opponents. A lot of talking back and forth in good-natured. But I do understand his frustration in Green Bay. He's a reigning MVP. He's performed well since he's taken that job over. And how does he get thanked? He's played with a lot of bad defenses. He's played for a general manager who decided to draft a quarterback instead of helping get skill position or an offensive line put around him. I do understand his frustration in Green Bay, but I think he'll play one more year in Green Bay and then probably be out of town.
I think he's definitely going to play. I think there's a lot of drama, and he deserves to be upset in a lot of ways. And I kind of give him credit for not saying a whole lot. People want him to say stuff, and I think there's a time and a place for that. Maybe he has said stuff behind the scenes that we don't know about. To me, there's a lot of stuff going on there, but I do think he'll play in that first game. As we get closer to that first game, we'll obviously talk about Aaron Rodgers and the Packers a lot more. All right, we try to go outside the lines a little bit. Justin, you killed the first two questions. This will be easy for you. We haven't talked in a while, guys. Summer fun is almost over. Did you have a summer highlight with the family? Did you pick up a hobby? What was the highlight of your summer as we get to football season, which finally begins this week?
Summer highlight. Let's see. It was a nice summer. We did a lot of camping, my wife and I, which is something we enjoy. We went to some national parks here. Just being able to get out and enjoy nature and for a time have things seem like it was getting back to normal was nice for the summer. Highlights, went home, visited my family. That was nice to see for the 4th of July. That was probably the highlight of my summer so far.
And they were clamoring for the podcast to come back, weren't they?
Actually, some of them were asking, where's the podcast at? So,
all right, Thomas family, we're back for you. Thanks for listening. We appreciate it. Especially Jerry, the the patriarch of the family. I got to meet Jerry one day. If you're listening, Jerry, you and I are going to have a beer one day. All right, Shanle, did you have a summer highlight with the fam? Maybe it was a personal highlight for Scott Shanle this summer. I don't know.
Yeah, it's been a good summer. I mean, we took a trip, and that's definitely a highlight, spending time with the family. But no doubt, to me, the highlight of this summer has been the return to a little bit of normalcy.
Yeah.
Going to a restaurant without a mask, going out in public, seeing people live more normal lives than what we all witnessed in 2020.
Yeah.
I think for me, that's been the highlight of my summer. Just feeling like we're getting closer to normal and sensing that we can be around one another, because humans need interaction. Humans need to be around one another, and isolating all the time is not good. So I just think the highlight of the summer was feeling like we're getting closer to normal.
Absolutely. That's a great point. It's weird. Last football season, I'm still amazed it happened. Really went off without a hitch, especially the college football season. The way these players are on campus and everything. And I remember traveling on the road and seeing different parts of the country treat this pandemic differently. I mean, you went up to Chicago and it was lockdown mode. I live in Florida. It's the Wild West, man. They haven't worried about the pandemic for months now. It's crazy. But you see different parts of the country take it in different ways. I did a different trip with my daughters. That's what we did this summer. And with one of them, we flew to Seattle and we spent 8 days, and we drove to San Francisco, and we hit all kinds of great spots on that trip. But it was great. It was good to be back to normal. It was great to go to restaurants, like you said, Shanle, and to kind of bring it all full circle, Justin, kind of get outdoors a little bit and enjoy that with the family too. So here's hoping things continue to get better. And the NFL season, Shanle, I hope it's better. I want to get your take on, this. If you were a player and the whole vaccine issue, how do you think they're handling this from an NFL perspective right now?
It sounds like it's team by team basis. If the majority of guys are getting a shot on the team, I think it puts pressure on the other 10 guys who haven't got a shot to get it. But if 90% of the team isn't getting a shot, now I don't think it puts pressure on those guys to get a shot. But the NFL has made their stance be known. They expect everybody to be vaccinated, with the possibility of fines if you test positive, individual fines for unvaccinated players if you test positive, and then having to forfeit games. So the NFL has basically said, we're not dealing with your coronavirus issues. You're going to deal with them on your own, whether it be a fine or a forfeit. And I'm looking forward to seeing fans return to the stadiums, whether it was college football, whether it was pro football. It didn't feel like football last year. I went to high school games here in Texas. We had fans in the stands. Those games were more energetic and fun to go to than the college and pro games last year. And the fans make the game. I think that's the one thing we all learned and that we can't take for granted, is that the fans' passion and enthusiasm in the stands is what makes sports great. And I'm looking forward to return to that.
Well, that's the perfect exclamation point in our return, our Done Dat podcast return for the amazingly 2021 football season. It'll be Sean Payton's, I believe, his 16th season. Or if you have Bounty Gate, it'll be 15. But 16th season with Sean Payton in charge, without Drew Brees, without a lot of guys on defense, without Michael Thomas to begin the season. But it won't be boring in the coming weeks. And keep it right here. We're going to break it down with producer Justin Thomas and, of course, former Saints linebacker Scott Shanle. We're on all the platforms. We're on iTunes. We're on Stitcher. We're on Spotify, Google. So please subscribe. Give us feedback. Tell us what you want. And, again, where are we on Twitter, Justin?
At Done That Podcast.
Please follow us. And we're back in business, baby. It's football season. It's the Done Dat Podcast. We'll be with you all through training camp. And, of course, when the season rolls around, we'll break it down. Now, life after Drew Brees, we'll see how it goes for your New Orleans Saints. For Shanle, for Justin Thomas, I'm Mike Nabors. We'll talk to you next time.